Welcome to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we chat with incredible people doing incredible things. Today we're excited to be joined by Dr Pepe Marais, one of South Africa's most influential advertising figures and the co-founder of Joe Public, the country's largest independent communications group. Pepe is not just a creative force in advertising, he's also a passionate advocate for education reform and entrepreneurship development. Known for his philosophy that purpose drives profit, Pepe has transformed numerous brands while maintaining a deep commitment to growing people and their businesses. He's a father, an author, speaker, and a business leader who believes in the power of creativity to drive meaningful change in society. In this episode, we delve into the essence of being. We discuss creativity in life and business, and we uncover the silver lining in adversity. Join us as we unpack these insights and more. And so we bring you the incredible Dr. Pepe Marais.
My hypothesis is the first creation is the being creation, spiritual creation, and the next is the human creation. Hence the validation of the human and the being. And our humanness has made the human more important than the being. And actually the being's the power, because that's the image of.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating, it's such a, so if you read it for knowledge, you'd be a bit silly not to read it.
And I don't know if you saw, I was almost going to put it out here because I thought you'd thought you might resonate with, but maybe tell me the yin yang lamp. So I love that symbol, and that so there's one line that's spoken about quite a bit, and so the meek shall inherit the earth, and that line is apparently also, it can be translated differently, and the translation is that that it's the people that have their have swords but have them sheathed will inherit the earth. And what that means apparently is that so it translates to a rule, and one of the rules that I follow is stand up straight with your shoulders back. So you must be dangerous, but you must have that under voluntary control. So like mixed martial arts will teach you this. Like, it's a beautiful thing. Like, you must be dangerous. You must be able to say,
yes, but your first rule is walk away.
But you must be able to, if you have to. So the people that they have swords, but they're sheathed, those will inherit the earth. And whereas the other way of reading it, like, I was very sort of negative, like the people, that's how
you also, and often, but that's, I suppose, that I didn't know about that. So see, that's why I said these things are amazing learning experiences. But that shows you how it does get misinterpreted, because, for instance, this friend that I went to visit is not materialistically successful. But he's got a very strong opinion against people who are. And so he will interpret the meek as the poor will inherit the earth and the rich you. And I'm going, money is the root of all good. Money's in the right hands can do incredible things. So right now my ambition is to make a lot more money than I've made so far, because I want to be able to do amazing things with it. Like I met people, I've got a friend who wrote out R1 million check for orphanage in front of me. I mean, and that not even egotistically, because he didn't do it because I was sitting there. It happened while I was there, because he made a commitment. This was quite a while ago. So, and you look at that and you go, geez, that's someone who can affect real change just through capital. So, but it's interesting. So the meek, I'll remember that. I love that.
Yeah, and the way I'd always interpreted it was that, like, the meek, and I guess, I don't know if this is the general way to interpret it, Luke, but like the meek stay here and the rest go to heaven. Like the meek get to stay.
Well, that's...
Like, they get stuck behind.
Oh,
that's
no.
how I interpret it.
Oh, wow.
But that's a narrative of what heaven, like even the concept of heaven is. It's like the saints will be removed from the non-saints, and it's like, well, maybe heaven's not a destination, but it's the way we live, or our current experience.
The afterlife. Yeah, you just tapped onto it. So the tap of the, we were talking about this previously, and the notion of the afterlife. So we've had our shaman on here to one of the early episodes, and he works with the South American tribes, and everything they do is in relation to 7 generations. That's when we'll come to fruition. They do things now, and that will be like, so plant trees that only you will not sit under the shade, that sort of thing. You know?
Yes.
Just butchered that quite, but
but that one, yes.
yeah, but that you'll never see the shade of. Okay, so and it's so interesting to understand people's interpretation of afterlife. And what the words just put together. Ricky Gervais, I love Ricky Gervais, but yeah, again, with all of these people I've mentioned.
But I don't care, man. The comedian.
Comedian, yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care, yeah.
I don't care.
So he goes,
he's smart.
He wrote Afterlife. And it is Netflix hit multiple seasons. And there's a certain line in there that I felt it was written for me. And I've got it that the whole first episode, actually, I feel like I just resonated with it so much. But that afterlife that Jordan Peterson or these guys think about, or they talk about, the afterlife being just after your life. So that's what it is. It's just after you're gone, and everyone else is. So whatever you do, it's after your life that stuff happens, and to sort of unpack that. It's not talking about, so this human will cease to exist. The being will be carried on to the afterlife.
Yes.
But like my father passed away in 2016, and I hear him sometimes when he laughs. I can hear his laugh when I think about it, and so this is his afterlife. I'm living his afterlife. We are living his afterlife. That was one of the interpretations.
Oh, that's interesting. But part of it's also, are you saying, okay, so that's one aspect of afterlife, but there's also the being that does move on to a next potential experience.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that's
we don't know.
Exactly.
Well, we don't.
We don't.
And I'm hoping that there's some board of directors that welcomes us and like, you were close in that podcast with that assumption, you know, on that day.
Yeah.
You're so close.
So have you seen
Absolutely.
the
I'll
video?
be pissed if it's not.
There's a video called The Egg. It's a YouTube thing. And spoken about it before, but we didn't actually have in the links. We'll put in the links of the show notes for this one. And basically it's an animation, and the little being in the animation opens his eyes, and he's been knocked over, and he's greeted by a god, and the god speaks to him, and he asks about his wife, and the god is very pleased that he's asked about his wife. He's happy about that, and then he says to the guy, he says, you need to go now. He's like, where am I going? He says, you're going back to Earth. You're going to be a 14th century peasant woman now. That's your next life. And he says, what? Like, but I just came from the 21st. I'm like, no, you have to live every life. You are everyone you've ever met and everyone you will ever meet. You, them. So then, and he has to go back and live that life. So that's it. It's just one being that's just living all of these lives. And it translates to that, I'm you and you're me and we are one, saying, that one of the quotes. So, sure. And as well as you would have heard of this one, treat everyone as if they're dressed in drag, as if they're God. Treat everyone as if they're God dressed in drag, because they are. So
it's amazing, Like I'm sitting here, you remind me of a book. You know Wendy Mahoney?
Yes, very well.
So Wen's gave me this book. It's about a psychologist in New York, I think, and his experience with one of his patients who regressed, but like hectically over and over, like thousands of years, different lives. Many lives, many masters, I think it's called.
Yes, I know it. I haven't got to it yet. Yeah.
Hell of a read, because, and then again, when you go, that's why Google is so like, what the hell? You get both sides. But it was just a fascinating. And Wendy, have you done new NLP?
She's done it. I've done it with her. Yeah.
Yeah. So with her, I've done it for 4 years with her, since 2020 till last year, and then sort of taking a break. It's too hectic. It's like hard work.
Have you done the Enneagram at all?
No.
Okay, I'd love to know what
NLP, dude. I was half
Yeah.
crying. I was like, no.
the Enneagrams. Yeah, very interesting. I'll send you a link to it. But I'd be interesting. I should be able to, from your book, be able to place you, but I can't.
Okay.
I'll have to look. Yeah, but thanks so much for coming on. You've met Luke, my business partner and creative director.
Who's Tim? So what's you're just
I'm
running?
John.
John.
Yeah.
Is that like
So
by
Tim-
chance, Luke and John? It's like the disciples.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
There we go.
Ooh. But
The
who's
sounds all
Tim?
good, huh?
I'm going, who's Tim?
Hey?
The sounds all good. We go.
Yeah, Tim's good. Pepper, would you mind just moving your mic slightly closer to you?
Yeah. So TIM is an acronym for the Incredible Machine,
Oh, okay.
or potentially this is marketing. So it's a Seth Godin book that I'm
Okay.
a big fan of that author as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, this is me.
Exactly.
Hey,
this is
there we
magic.
go.
There is magic. I mean, yeah.
There's so many.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but the Incredible Machine, it was a game that in the 90s on a PC that I grew up with. And basically you get a stage and you've got a task to do, and you've got a random set of tools, like a basketball, and then there's a hamster wheel, and then there's a pulley and a bowling ball and a rocket and a firelight and stuff. And then all you've got is a button. You have to place those things on the stage, and the request will be to turn the light on or light the candle. And you've got to place the bowling ball so that it knocks the cage, the wheel, the mouse runs or whatever, turns the lighter on. And so you get these tools, but it's totally like arbitrary, and you have to make something happen. So it's very much like life. You've got any given time, you haven't got the exact right tools. And entrepreneurship is like that too, where you really have to make things work, and you have to be proactive. It's a big thing that I've picked up in your book, and Joe. Yeah, so that's the Incredible Machine.
Is this your first stint at entrepreneurship?
No.
So you've done a few.
Many. But
Okay.
yeah, so
No, just because you said you worked for X, Y, and Z.
and I was at Hunt Lascaris previously, and then left and started my own venture. I was always going to do it, but yeah, this is now in startup, and we're very excited about it. And yeah, because it's as far as we can tell, the first and only podcast and performance marketing agency in Africa potentially. So specializing in that, and then giving people a voice, and like we were saying, it's just detach and distributing a lot of the content. So there's so much that you can get out of this. You can write books in this format. Like we'll have chapters. We'll have a chapter after this of your story, and then obviously it's just a form of education.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, like the examples we gave you or we talked about it's stuff you're doing anyway, and you just really need to press record and then send it out. And in this format, we're not live, so we can do post. And that's what we do. We do post-production, and we do distribution, and then we do the marketing of. So anything you can take out. We don't necessarily take out my ums and ahs and when I fumble over words. Sorry to the listeners, that might irritate you. But we don't necessarily take that out because it's authentic to be me. The AI can definitely take that out. It's very easy. And if you want to comment on it, guys, and yeah, tell me to take out those because it irritates your listening, I'll consider it. But I'm open to suggestions. But yeah, so this format has been such a great experience. And like I said to you, what we're doing here is getting people that we deem as incredible machines. They're remarkable. They've got something to say. We've got something to learn from them. And we're so grateful to have you here on the show and be able to talk to you. And then they should have a podcast. And now you're doing the sampling of this, what a podcast is like. And if you like it, well, we just happen to do podcasts. So there's no strings attached or anything like that.
So you're putting the line out there, but thank you.
Yeah. No, so
listen, awesome. And something I have been toying with, like thinking about it. But as I said, I'm like, and as you said, you can always conceptualize and help and sort of mold someone to what is the direction. Because, I mean, I'm doing tomorrow, my TED Talk is probably it must be about my 200th. and this is for someone who suffered from, you would know, social phobia. So to be a really good public speaker is like which is also interesting because that comes from figuring out who I am. Because as I figured that out, it started dissipating. And it dissipated down, probably if it was at 100%, because it was totally debilitating, it's dissipated to about 5%. So I still have it, which I'm super grateful for because it keeps me super humble. Like honestly, like even when I make this joke that I've got two talents. The one is that I'm humble and the other one's that I'm excellent. So even when I say that, then I can say it with a bit of humility. But that's because of the social phobia. Because it kind of it's almost like it's put there to govern my ego.
Yeah, keep you in check. That's it.
Totally.
I totally resonated with that, and I actually didn't know that was a thing. And your excuses that you used for your social phobia when you got clammy or whatever, and you just say, I need to take this call, or I've definitely, thought about that. And I joke that, and the listeners would have heard and the viewers would have seen this before, is like my superpower is being awkward. And it is. It's one of my superpowers. So, and then that just allows me to live in that and dwell in that social phobia. But like,
do you sweat though? Because I used to, and I still not as much now. But geez, I used to sweat when I got anxiety or when I was like started. Because, and it's so fascinating how much we put this on ourselves in lockdown when we were all on teams.
Yeah,
I was living at the river with my wife and our boy, and I was wearing the same T-shirt every day for like 3 days because I didn't move. And I started going, oh crap, but people might think that I'm smelly or whatever, like a little story in my head. And then I thought, but let me do an experiment and see if I can remember what people wear. I couldn't remember what anyone wear. You can't remember what people wear on a certain day. So I thought, geez, amazing the stories. So even that anxiety and what I look like was all just a fabrication.
Yeah.
But I sweated like a bullet, man.
I've got it. Yeah, I did the sweats, and then I'll shake, and you'll hear it in my voice, and I'm sure the listeners have heard it. That's it. So, but there's a lovely quote, something you've just got me to, and I got it from a post by John Zanar. So, but I'm not sure who the quote's from. But it's something like, it's in our 20s and 30s we care about what everyone thinks. In our 30s and 40s we don't care what anyone thinks. We're like defiant. And then in our 50s and 60s, we realize they weren't thinking about us at all. And that's it.
So true.
And then
that's so true. That is so true. It's the same thing with materialistic things.
Yeah. It's also sad though, because I wished we thought about each other
100%.
more. Yeah.
Well, on one side that, but I also wish we didn't make such a big thing about what people think at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like your yin and your yang.
Yeah, exactly.
But I find the same thing with materialistic things. The older you grow, the less those things matter. It's bizarre. The more you can have it, the less you need it. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So, I think, welcome. And how we kick these things off.
Are we only there?
Yeah, I mean, but no, we're not. We've been going.
We've been running for a while.
So, yeah,
it's like already an hour.
So I'm going to be referencing your book, guys. It's Growing Greatness. And there'll be links to it in the show notes, in posts, and on our website so people can purchase it. In my mind, this book should be a set book for any creative. Like it really was phenomenal, and we'll be referencing it throughout. And again, like I said to you, part of this, my favorite books are biographies, and part of the shows, people come and they do their origin story. So and you did that exercise. I think, I don't know if you I did, because you've done it in depth.
Didn't Borna send it through to you?
I've got it.
It's a lacquer little thing that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, in hindsight, I wouldn't go down because those things were massive gifts, but you only realized it much later.
Exactly, yeah.
So I kind of did it visually, but in hindsight, those things were all massive.
Well, they made you who you are.
Privileges.
So the universe gives you what you need to evolve to the next level.
Fascinating.
And that's exactly what you say there. So how we start this is we try to figure out why you like this. That's the question I'll ask a guest. And you started off with a bang. November 5th.
Unceremonious bang.
November 5th, Guy Fawkes Day.
Yeah.
That's it. So I don't know if you want to just start with that, and then we'll we'll get into it from there.
So tell me if I go too far, So yes, my first living memory, I think I do put it in my book. So born on 5th of November, 1968, which means I'm turning 57 this year. I woke up the other morning thinking I'm 13 years away from 70. It's quite a sobering realization. But then I'm also a fan of Clint Eastwood, So I'm going like, well, that's still a long way to go. 40 years,
Yeah.
Can do a lot in 40 years. And my first living memory was actually so as you ask me now, the first visual that comes up is being in the toilet of the flat we lived in then, and my mother sitting on the toilet. Like, how do you remember that when you under 6 months old? It's quite fascinating.
Is this after NLP that you were able to access?
No,
Okay.
I always access that memory.
That's interesting because it seems too young. I was like, I read
It
it
doesn't
and I
make
was
sense.
like, you could tell what the bathroom floor was.
Black and white tiles, window at the top. And what was interesting, her name is actually Marina Magdalena. So it's like Mary Magdalene. It's like weird.
Mm.
So I'm not saying I'm Jesus, but you know what I'm saying? So it was like and that's later on, I connected that with how I perceived her because the sun was behind her head on the toilet. So it felt like I had an angel.
Yeah.
It's my mother. Who I've got a very strange relationship with. Never know, she might see stuff like this. But because that 14 years of trauma was quite severe, and I always go like, why would you stick something out for so long? But I know a lot of people in abusive relationships just don't get out. So that was, I say it's unceremonious because I was a very unassuming, skinny, big ears, brown eyes, underperformer, except for music, actually, when I think back. So I played piano and I was really naturally talented at it, but then because boys teased me, I stopped it.
Mm. And then you learned again in the army because of
No, that was guitar.
Your music.
I actually did piano. I had this wonderful piano teacher in 2018. I thought, okay, I'm going to learn to play piano again. A wonderful gay man, but he was very touchy. And I realized that if it was a woman that was touchy, it would probably be even more uncomfortable. So I was probably more comfortable with him touching me than if it was a woman. And because he was just so blown away with how quickly I could pick up stuff. So I've definitely got a huge musical gene, which comes from my father, because my older sister's got it, my younger sister, we've all got music. But I rediscovered it in the army.
Now you credit your book at the beginning to your father because you amounted to nothing. So what was that credit again?
What did it say? It was exactly that. Like he pretty much set me up for everything I aspired to be because I wanted to be the opposite. And I also discovered subsequently through the years of interrogating it that he had love. I think his purpose was love. And he was so badly damaged because adults are damaged at childhood, 0 to 6. So, and I think he was so severely damaged, he just never figured it out. And back in those days, you couldn't go and see a shrink. That was frowned upon. You didn't speak about it. You don't cry. You don't openly cry. You never cry. So I think he was carrying so much within him, but subsequently I realized he was love. And the reason why I think that is when I went on that transformational journey in 2006-07, when I went through the process of finding what's at my being, 2 other concepts came up before my own came up. And the one was happiness and the other one was love. And it turned out my mother is happiness. So I'm assuming my dad was love. And I did an NLP process where I went into his heart and I saw a flame burning in his heart. That was love. But he was just so damaged, like destroyed. Which in another way, when I think about it, that's one of my potential fears of why I'm so invested in growing people, because I don't want them to end up. I've seen what it looked like when massive talent amounts to absolutely on all levels.
Because he was the creative, he was the artist.
Everything. I mean, you see that amount of talent in a person that can be so and remember, there's not just, I also speak to there, which is Robin Sharma's knowledge, not mine. But then I also argue, well, maybe it's also not easy somewhere else. There's always greater knowledge, but I will accredit him because it was given to him from the source first, I'm assuming. But the 8 forms of wealth. So my father spectacularly failed at spiritual, at family, at spiritual, at his health, at family, at his craft, at money, at his circle of influence. He failed at every single one of the 8 forms, but spectacularly so. So absolutely brought down to and I saw that in front of my eyes. So even when I put him away in Namibia, he died 3 days before the birth of our son. And my son's turning 17, so it's 2008, which was also fascinating. So putting my father into a place, and then within a week, because they cold turkeyed him. I mean, what are you thinking?
And that was so the alcohol quite, I don't know if you would have heard of this one before, but so your father had that, you said the same social.
Definitely social phobia.
Then added to it with the alcohol. And the quote is, "He who makes a beast of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man."
Sure.
So it's that you get to be that alcohol.
Let's give that one to me afterwards.
Yeah.
That's a very fascinating one.
So you numb the pain of being a man with that, and it's the most dangerous drug there is.
Totally.
Statistically proven.
Oh, really?
Done.
It's interesting because I don't want to actually go into that. I'd really highly respect. I work for clients that goes actually against my own behavior, which could be seen as a ethical dilemma. But at the same time, and I don't know if this is just a sort of a post-rationalization of my position and what I chose to be my craft, but I'm still going, the prostitute who finds God is held in higher regard than the rabbi. So you might be a brand that people perceive is damaging, and you might get a conscious leader that switch you into a different direction, and with the might of that brand, you can overnight do good.
Yeah. So and we believe in moderation, like have moderation, and even moderation of moderation.
I always question that though. I always go like, so let's just kill people moderately.
Kill them probably, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I always question moderation as a concept. Conceptually, I do question it because I go, but then I am a bit of a radical.
Yeah.
And I'm softening my radicalness because I'm trying to hold on much more lightly to my very deep beliefs.
Yeah.
So I really believe deeply, but I love that concept of hold it very lightly. It's not a big deal. I can't affect that much. I'm one person. But I have often questioned that notion of moderation because I'm going like, I'm not sure, because there's a lot of things moderately that's not actually good for you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. There's definitely some stuff that, no, it is a good point.
Well, I suppose when I do gym, I don't do it moderately either. So,
yeah, I guess you can't do it moderately. Yeah, some things exactly right. But the alcohol debate and the ethics on that's gambling and that sort of stuff, like some people it doesn't do anything to their lives, and some people it does. Like I stay away from that, like because I've seen it. And the alcohol is one of the things that I've learned lessons from that. I've had my curse bestowed upon me, and eyes wide open. But back to so your father had that talent. Your mother, your mother's still alive.
Yeah, and actually she turns out to be super artistic too.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So now in the older age, 80 plus, she's painting. For years she's made the most magnificent quilts. So it turns out she's also got a big creative and then again, when you think about it, we are all creative. Somehow we just stopped drawing at 5. I don't know why.
Our mutual friend,
we all draw.
Yeah, our mutual friend Narietta talks about it too, and you might have spoken at length with her about it. But yeah, that's the exact point. We're born creative. We come up with things, and then somehow we
can make children.
That's it.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah. So I love this. I'm going to go to quotes. I am Pepe Marais. My name resides comfortably in the word people.
How's that, Dame?
Love it. I exist for growth. I exist for those around me to be the best that they can possibly be. Yeah.
So what I forgot about through my little journey, which came to my consciousness maybe in the last 2-3 years, and that happened, it was a perfect little positive storm. It came out through my academic journey. It came out through a leadership journey I co-created with some friends, intersecting with not being able to implement purpose into our business. Like all these things came together, and that's that a purpose statement has to have a to and a through, not just a to, an intention and an action. Because I got very interested in the failure rate of strategy. So 93% of business strategies fail on implementation. And a purpose, which is ultimately a deeper strategy, is even more difficult to implement. So if I take Joe Public, I was being nice this week. We were having a debate and I said it's implemented 20%. I don't even think it's implemented 1%. And that's after 16 years of someone in the business very passionately driving it. So it's just the through, what's missing in bringing out the best in those around me, the through is through bringing out the best in myself. Hence I stopped smoking. Hence I stopped drinking. Hence I stopped eating. Like all the things all the choices, lifestyle choices that I changed was just me honoring me to be the best I can be. So through example, maybe people will follow.
There we go. And it is a form of learning. It's entrepreneurial. So the form of learning, and we've got a mutual connection, Alan Reyes. You mentioned him in the front of your book as well. But and I think he's one of the people responsible for bringing entrepreneur organization to South Africa, if I'm mistaken there. I'm not mistaken. And one of the learnings I've got from them is entrepreneurs, the way they accept information, or if they're open enough. And entrepreneurs generally have a trait of openness. Creative people are very open. It can be good and bad because, the yin and yang of it. But so how they accept this information is through experience shares. So I'll give you an experience share now. Like one of the things that I started after joining EO and during COVID, we were checking in on our team via Teams and video, and we asked them a one word. So the one word is how are you feeling at this moment in time? Like that's it. It's not good or bad. Yeah, just in one word. And then the person will give you their one word, anxious, whatever. And then there's certain trigger words that I'd look out for. Overwhelmed, then I'll just ask them to stay behind and we'll sort that problem out because that's a trigger and I've got those words. But what it does for them, it's a presencing. And then for you, you get to know their state. So how to approach them and all that sort of stuff. And then the next thing we do is yesterday's best. So what's the best thing that happened yesterday? And COVID was brutal. Like some of my team, the best thing that happened yesterday was that the day ended. Like they were losing loved ones. It was horrific. But generally, like the best thing, there's something. You cooked a lasagna, or your wife's lasagna was amazing, or whatever it is. And then what you get out of that is it's an exercise of gratitude. And then what I get out of that is team building, because now I know you like lasagna, and we know we should eat it at the Italian place next monthly meeting or whatever it is. So giving, like, that's a form of what really worked for me, and giving it as an experience share to people, and that story hopefully people can take out of it, and we take information out of learning and out of the stories, and that's what. So great about these podcasts, I guess, too. You get to tell the stories and people figure out what bits of them will work for them.
100%. I want to check something. Where does that tool come from? I like the concept of that.
It's a mishmash of EO, the one word,
yes,
and then a gratitude exercise. I can't remember exactly where it came from.
That's really cool.
But it is.
I'll steal that.
Yeah, well, that's the experience share. Actually, I do know where it comes from. A friend at Unilever.
Okay.
Claire, I'll credit you with that, Claire. She did it with her team. She told me about it. I thought it was brilliant. I stole it.
Well, I'm going to nick it from you, and it's going to come full circle.
Yeah. So, and then just to your point, I love this. We talked about this off air earlier. Your point about statistics that you said, and you say this one. It said that 64%.
Oh, did I say 64 there?
No,
I've
you
been
said
using
90,
67.
You said 90. Yeah. The book is 64% of all statistics are made up on the spot, including this one mentioned. Love it.
I use it all the time. It's so true. So even my academic journey, I used so much creativity in that thing, and the professors thought it was amazing. So I cooked it. Not completely. There's a lot of data in it, but you can. I mean, it's fascinating. So I think if I'm going to do a PhD, another one, and I'll do another degree one, like in a few years when my son's out of home. Not now, never. Not doing that to him again, to my wife. But I'm very interested in how you can test consciousness. So I rudimentally tested it. I made up my own little sort of rudimental way of measuring it. So that already showed a gap that there's an opportunity to figure out how do you measure how conscious a person is. But then what was fascinating is I wanted to match the consciousness of the leader to the consciousness of the organization. And then I realized through my study, through my analysis, I went, oh crap, like the worst, least conscious organizations has a leader that is saying that he's the most, or through my test, he's coming up way too high. So I had to figure out a tool to build to get my hypothesis to be true. It was fascinating. So I found the Dana Kruger effect, which is in simple terms, the person with a higher ability will always assume their ability is lower, and the person with a lower ability will always assume their ability is higher. So I used the Dana Kruger effect to give almost like a handicap, to give people points to normalize my data and to match less conscious organizations with less conscious leaders. So this is a kind of little aside.
Very interesting.
Waffle.
Yeah. So no, that's it. And I know you to be an entrepreneur, and that's Luke and I both share that in common with you, among other things. But I absolutely love these quotes, and they're not in a particular order in the book. They've taken out from various passages, but starting a business is one of the most rewarding acts of creativity you'll ever experience, second only to the birth of your child. And then it goes, there's simply no other way to close the poverty gap in our country than to inspire, support more and more people to succeed at the second most creative act available to us in this one life on Mother Earth, that of founding and growing your own business, and in doing so, becoming the master of your own destiny. And the last bit. Yeah, it became my deep belief that if you fix our education, you fix our economy. So we work with entrepreneurs, you work with, and so do you, and you work with education specifically. But that stuff in your book is through art. You want to talk about that at all?
So the bit on
the creativity.
Okay, so let's start from the first one. Okay, so my attachment, because now I've got a boy with my wife. Okay, Jasper, 17 years.
And Heidi, I would love to meet them.
When if you're ever in Joburg or if we're down here, we will.
I feel like I know them from this.
So he's our flesh and bone child, and Joe's, mine, Gareth's bricks and mortar child. And the reason why I drew that parallel is because the emotional attachment is very similar. Obviously, when Jasper's life's endangered, it changes instantly. And he's a million times more important than Joe. Mm. But on any given day, like for instance, if someone says something negative about Joe that's not true, or if someone bullies, or if someone does something that compromises sustainability, I go into primal high alert, like I do with my son. So I've had all these experiences in terms of, like, I can feel them. So hence I formed that, that's why I said believing is seeing. I formed that belief. I'm not dogmatic at all. I change my beliefs quite easily, but not the root ones. The ones that are deep, I go, for this lifetime, let the being go on and then find another body to have. But so that's the first one. I really experienced it like that. The growth I've experienced as an entrepreneur at a human and a being level, I would not be the person I am today if it wasn't for Joe. There's just no way. Like the cellular learning, because cellular learning is like a child, don't touch the plate. And then they go and touch it, then they learn through their cells. That's how you properly learn. So the learning through a business is so deep. So deep. You can almost, that's why someone who maybe come into a business and might be elevated even to a level of ownership is never really going to understand that depth. You can only truly get it if you start a business. And in fact, I know one person who has got the same level of commitment that I have, and that's very rare, who's not necessarily started the business. But to get that depth, and you also can't point finger at people, it's just the way it is. It's exactly, in fact, it's like you can't speak to people about what it's like to have a child without having a child. You just can't. It's just the way it is. I can't speak on a stage. I can read all the books on childbirth. I cannot authentically stand on a stage and actually give an opinion on childbirth. And entrepreneurship for me is the same. If you've done it, doesn't matter if you've done it. If you've got 100 million or billion rand business, the only difference is zero. There's no difference. If you're a micro entrepreneur, SME, it's the same thing. So so that's the next thing, and then the last thing.
On that, your suffering is relative as an entrepreneur, but going, there was something in that, and it's in the case study that we'll touch on later, guys, and it's a great one to listen to. So, but it's a Confucius quote. It's also not Confucius. It's probably someone else, and it's attributed to Confucius in my instance. But show me and I'll forget. Tell me and I may remember. No. I butchered that right off the bat, guys. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're getting to, and it's also in your case study that you've submitted. Awesome. And then that ties in really nicely into what you were just about to jump into, the education bit.
The education bit, massive. So originally I was interested in HIV/AIDS because there was such a burning point at that time. 2007. So when my shift happened and I became less selfish and more giving, I realized that I was doing, in fact, prior to my shift, I was already donating money to an orphanage, but I was doing it for my own ego. It was completely selfish. It was nothing to do with kids. I didn't care about kids. It was all about feeling better about myself. And in that inner shift of authentically giving, I realized that the bigger thing to fix is actually education. Because I went like, okay, well, if you behave in a certain way, you're trying to put a plaster on the wound. You're not going to the root cause of the issue. So I got involved with education. In the end, I actually used 2 schools to do my master's study on. And in my study, I absolutely drew a parallel between, if you take 1% of South Africa earns 67% of all the income. Fact. That's a fact. That's not one of the stats made up on the spot. 26% earns 19% of the income, and 7% of the population lives off 80% of the population lives off 7% of all the income in the country. I mean, that's insane. And it's probably not just, we do have the biggest gap in South Africa, but globally you'll see there's a lot of these pictures. Now, if you take the schooling system, 27,000 schools, you will see that if you draw 2 graphs, they 100% mimic each other in terms of top performing, which are your top government, your greys, and your privates. You've got your middle population who's on the brink of dysfunction. 80%, 22,500 schools in South Africa are factually dysfunctional. Factually dysfunctional. I mean, that in itself is a crime.
Can you just elaborate on what that means? They're factually dysfunctional.
So you go and you look at, if I take, for instance, a lot of the teachers with the best intention comes from Bantu education. You in a system where you can't, we know that your home language is the best way of being taught, but you can't create books for all the languages. So now you make English a second language. I know English is a second language. I couldn't speak it when I left school. Now you've got kids who are being taught English out of English books, maths and science as an example, who doesn't have comprehension of English. So it's massively complex. Or you have a school that's built for 850 kids, and suddenly the school does marginally better than others, and the next moment it's got 2,500 kids in that school, 75 children per classroom. How does one teacher with the best intention and the best knowledge or even ability? So it is such a complex. And then on top of it, what happens is, because we lie, we're not honest. So we disclose the pass rate that's improving by lowering the standard. So that's one way to get our metric up. So we lower the standard. So bachelor's pass rate's now down to 50. And if you look within the 50s, there's other things you can get 35 and still get a bachelor's. Now that kid goes to varsity, drops out in the first year, they're not equipped. So that's the level of dysfunction. Or no one speaks to the fact that the dropout at end of grade 11 is so high that if you count the dropout into the current pass rate, it brings the pass rate down to below 40%. So all these things came out in my master's. And then I made this, I went like, okay, well, if you fix this one properly, if you put all your eggs in that education basket and you properly sort it out, you'll give our economy a massive chance to succeed. Because at the moment, we are not producing people that are even job ready. So everyone's driving transformation, which I fiercely support, but it should be called transformance, or it should be like a performance aspect to transformation. And we're not equipping people to the right level through a dysfunctional educational system. So,
and you speak about, so is the way to do that? There's a couple things. There's so much that you've said there, but is the way to do that entrepreneurial mindset and instilling that in an educational way, and as well as know thyself. Like that's one of your things, is finding out who you are, knowing who you are, and your purpose. And maybe the one comes before the other. Maybe the best way to know thyself is to jump off the cliff and build a plan on the way down, become an entrepreneur, or get. Is that one of the ways we can get?
So just anyone who listens to this must just Google the Amnesty report on South Africa's educational system, because there's a full-blown Amnesty report on it. So it's not just me making some assumptions here. It's absolutely factually. The problem with the narrative that we follow in our country, it is based mostly on emotion and not on facts and stats. And not that I'm just obsessed with facts and stats, but I think you need a more balanced, the yin and the yang. Like the more emotion, the less you're thinking, the less, so you got to be balanced between emotion and thinking. That's what makes great advertising great. There's strategic thinking behind it, so there's logic, but there's magic. And on that balance between magic and logic is wisdom. So you can't just have like emotion, but you also can't just have logic either. What were you asking? I missed it now.
So
you're saying?
With one of the, is it potentially a way to combat that education is be more entrepreneurial in our education system, so that we can have people prepared and they would know themselves better? So
that's we've still got the non-profit I started in 2008, and our school actually improved from number 670 township school something. It's up in the 670s. Back in 2008, township school in Gauteng, it's now number 1. So it's got a 100% pass rate. We thought we'd achieve it in 5 years. It took 17 years. And our doing within that was probably 0.1%. And the person who actually achieved that is the principal. So, which also shows me the power of leadership. But to me, if you ever want to fix anything in a company that employs 60 million people, it has to come from the top. It's not something, the change within this country took like 50 years from the bottom up. And then you'll lose another 5 generations. But if you go top down, you can change something in 5 years, because also capital. I remember in the business day, the Minister for Education verbatim, this is paraphrased, but she was given like 600-700 million rand to put towards education. And she literally stated, they quoted it for saying, with this donation, I will fix education once and for all. If you divide that number by the dysfunctional amount of school, you get like 30,000 rand a school. How are you going to fix schools with 30,000 rand a school when you've got 22,500 schools that are just not where they should be? And that's already within the context of an educational system that's not necessarily unlocking creativity.
Yeah. So just a transition, I see the gap there, because it's when I get to your relationship back to the book and back in with Gareth and how you guys met, and then it's just you talk it through.
Crazy,
rescues
Crazy.
all around them.
Listen, back on the education thing very quickly, it's not something I'm obsessed about anymore. I'm very passionate about it, but I've also realized you got to focus on what you can control, and then the rest will sort itself out over time, you know. But Gareth's story.
Yes. I am gonna, because you touched on that. Perfect. Another quote from the book: I have always found it quite insightful that the majority of people that I have known in my life who have created spectacular wealth never finished school or received formal tertiary education. That was interesting, and I think it does tie into what you said, the factual and the incorrectness there, and it's not helping at the moment anyway.
It's crazy. I mean, think about like that is, my 2 uncles left school at home. They were kicked out of home. My grandparents couldn't feed them. They were dirt poor from the Cape Flats, Afrikaner people, and the boys had to leave home and go and fend for themselves, 13 and 14. I mean, can you imagine that? And they are very, very wealthy. The one passed away, so of course I was actually doing a presentation to my kids' school, to the class below them. The principal asked me to come and speak to them on entrepreneurship, and I showed them all the big entrepreneurs, because everyone knows Steve Jobs and all that, but and they knew all of them. They actually knew Branson, and they knew Zuckerberg, and they knew Elon Musk from Pretoria. They knew everyone. So the big, you know, the guys who are in the top 5 richest people in the world. But I ended on Steve Jobs, who would have been today the 3rd wealthiest person in the world if he sustained. He would have been 70. He died when he was 56, and I'm 56. And then I introduced myself. They all clapped hands. Oh, and I said, who's wealthier, me or Steve? Because I'm alive. So we forget the context of what it means to be wealthy. It's not money. Not only money. Not only money. Jesus, I can't talk myself off the point.
No, that's fine. We were
What
going
was the
into.
point?
We were going into.
Cut that bit.
No. It's gold. What you've got there. It's like you speak about it. I've got it probably listed later to touch on. But in I interrupted you before you're about to take off with Gareth. And there's such an interesting. I've got this. Gareth turned the car around. John bought the ad. We didn't look back. Such was the belief in the takeaway product.
John Christie.
So this is the live wire electric
John
fence.
Christie.
Yeah. That's a piece of the book, and that creative that was there lined up an electric fence, and then you talk about that. But let's go about the way you met and those coincidences that you talk about, because there's a bar picture as well.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating story. That when I met him, so it was my thing that I wanted to do when I discovered art, because at school I was a D. You know, maths was my it was the only subject I did in high grade and matric. Everything was standard grade, but I love maths, so I'm really good at math. But I always knew I was going to start a business by 30. Once I discovered art, I was like, this is my craft. I'm good at something finally. So at art school, I was number 1 every single year from the first year. So I knew this is my natural rhythm. Start a business, and then the assumption, and right or wrong the assumption, but in ad industry, if you're a creative person, you need a business partner, which is a bit of a weird thing, because creativity is the business of advertising. It's a bit strange, but it is a bit like Jobs and can't remember what the other founder was.
Wozniak.
Wozniak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to find Gareth, and we also had a third creative partner, copywriter, Noel. And Noel actually worked with Gareth, and he said, well, you must meet Gareth. So when I met Gareth, it was the first time I've ever met him. So this must be January 1998, because we started in March. We started very quickly, like super fast, because of this intervention. I met him in Bar Delhi, Cape Town. He's to this day a very good surfer. He goes on surf trips once or twice every year, still. And he started telling me this thing that he's a surfer, and I was like, oh man, I'm a paddle skier. And he was like, oh geez, dude, a boatman. And he dropped a couple of F-bombs as well, because he was a bit disappointed that I'm now this boatman. I had long hair, so I looked like a surfer and a cool dude, but now I'm a paddle skier. Dutchman, bonehead, boatman. And he was like, oh, this idiot. 3 years ago in 1995, April, the first storms that came, because there's massive storm hits Cape Town in Aprils, and the waves that hit Sea Point are huge. And there's a surf spot called Thermopylae. And he started telling me about this dude that was surfing with him and his buddy Greg. And Greg Burtish, the big surfing family in Cape Town. And they saw this paddle ski wipe out on this 20-foot wave and into the Dolosa. And Gareth was like, that guy's drowning. He's definitely going to drown. And he went and he took the guy out. So he's now telling me this story. And I'll never forget, he said he found this roll of red pipe, rubber pipe that must have washed off a ship. And the paddle skier was concussed and unconscious. He actually went under the water and pulled him out from under the Dolosa. He was stuck under the Dolosa.
Face lacerated.
Nose broken, stuffed. Put him there, and then he said he struggled to get out because it was massive in that breakwater, but he pushed him out. And he went to a tiki box, because I remember cell phones literally came out that year, I think. Could have had a cell phone, but I think it was a tiki box. He found the ambulance, the NSRI. And where I remember myself being in the story is when the NSRI picked me off the rubber pipes. So then at that moment, I was like, not a fucking chance, dude. Because when you die, that's why it is the most incredible feeling. It is, 25 years old, the relief of the pressure, the unconscious pressure on my system at 25. So now you can imagine what it with us with children, you with a startup, me with our business, 250, 300 people to pay salaries, like all this stuff. But we're so used to it. We're so conditioned just to carry this load. That moment of death, that weight disappears. And that feeling is euphoric. And I went through that. My wife does pedagogy now. And when you start seeing the flashes, that's your spirit starting. So my spirit was busy leaving my body when he intervened. So I absolutely fundamentally experienced the end of my life at 25. And this dude tells me that. And then also what we do as people, because at that stage I come from a Christian background, but at that stage I'm not an atheist, but I'm not reading Bible, I'm not praying, I'm not, screw this crap. And that's why there's this argument that God does exist, because even the atheist will shout and scream, God help me. At that moment I was going, God help me, God help me, God help me. And I was past realizing God's not going to help me. So then I'm going. And that's where the intervention happened. So God actually helped me. I just didn't know that there was a human intervention. And as I'm telling the story, because I give Gareth a lot of crap, I'm reminded if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. So it's fascinating. And that's dinkum why it wasn't even like, okay, dude, we're starting a business. Like that's, okay, let's drink beer. Done that story. We didn't speak about, do you know, nothing. We just went, it's meant to be, we're starting a business. I resigned the next day. Mike Charlotte was like, are you mad? I was like, I'm starting this thing with this dude.
And then someone brings you a newspaper or a clip publication.
Photograph.
Yeah.
crazy. And this, Gareth is my witness to this, and Heidi's my witness. And when I wrote this book, Sanjay Mystery, Indian guy, he lives in Europe now, used to wear purple contact lenses. He drove a little purple Esprit, Lotus Esprit, like a old little Lotus, and he came screaming in, and our color was purple. Our shop at Purple Candy Stripes, the takeaway advertising shop on Loop Street. And he stopped there because we had parties every Friday, and because now everyone knew the story. So this was it was like an urban legend, but a true one. So everyone knew it. So he rocked up and he said, guys, you can't believe this. He came storming. We were a big party. Everyone's drinking. He came in with this little photograph. And it had, I was quite a bit bigger than now. But like, there was Gareth lying on the ground. There was this guy much bigger than him standing above him, about to smash him. And I had this guy around his arm and around his neck, pulling him off. And there's a photograph, and Heidi standing like there, and we were all pissed. And I still remember what happened was this fight started. This guy threw him, and as he came down, I saw this guy's going to hit this guy. So I was pissed. So I was Dutch courage. So I just grabbed the oak from behind and hauled him off Gareth. And that happened. There was what do they call them? They called them the Advertising Benevolent, I think it's ABF. It was an Advertising Benevolent Function. And that must have been the one in the same year, 1995, January. And he saved my life in April. So we've got these two incredible intersections without knowing each other, because we only met in 1998. And then I tried to find that picture, because when you tell the story, the first one's already a bit far-fetched, and then you go the second one, you go like, because we question as people, you know. And Sanjay didn't have the picture anymore. So, but you find Sanjay Mystery now, you find Heidi now, they're all there. They saw this picture, we're going like, no man, this can't be.
Yeah, so he saved you and then you rescued him, it seems
Well,
like.
I sort of intervened, and then he saved me from death.
Yeah, sure.
I saved him from a good club.
Yeah. So this is one of the things I'd love to share with the audience, and I just thought this was brilliant. It's a program to tap into young talent that you did. I don't know if you still do this or if it's something you'd love to get back into or anything like that. But this is direct quote from the book, guys. It was simple. Based on the way normal restaurants work, we had a night shift from 6 to 9 p.m., during which time students from the universities around would come in and work on real briefs in exchange for a tip. Much more than just an opportunity to earn stipend, some money towards their studies. It gave them an opportunity to work on real briefs with far better creative direction, and was available to them at their respective college. That was available to them at their respective colleges. I thought this was brilliant.
It was amazing.
Tapping into that after hours and again the restaurant theme, and is anyone else doing that? Is anyone?
No.
It's such an opportunity.
And when the model started shifting, because the takeaway model, rare, medium, well done ideas, offer menu types, so pay us for our thinking, not for our time. The business model now is pay us for our time, which actually, in my view, supports mediocrity and slowness. And so if I have a strategist that can crack the best strategy in the world, which we do have, probably in an hour. I mean, he's a genius. But that wouldn't make sense. So I'd rather put a lesser strategist to work 3 weeks because I get paid more for that strategy. I mean, it's insane. So the model is totally like not thought through in terms of adding value. And I think what the model's also done, it's created this churn sweatshops, just churning stuff that doesn't make any difference. I mean, 99.99% of the world's global marketing. I mean, Orlando Wood, London researcher, exposed it last year at Cannes. 92% of the $750 billion that gets spent on advertising is totally wasted. Yeah. Totally wasted, according to his research, and I think his data point is being nice.
Yeah.
So there's this whole thing. So that takeaway model was brilliant. And I mean, we served clients in that market that went to bigger agencies, couldn't get a job out. I got into trouble with my ex-boss because one of their clients couldn't get work out of them, walked in, we charged them medium concept of the menu at this price, cracked the concept, produced it, they were gone. We got so the concept then inspired this idea to use the students, and the cost was terrible. It was 10 Rand an hour. It was back then. Listen, it is 8 years ago. Times had doubled. It was like $100 an hour today, so it's not too bad. $200 for 2 hours is more than we pay sometimes our entry-level workers. And some of those youngsters from AAA and Red and Yellow, I think already existed, I can't remember, but definitely AAA. Those kids, they became very good people in advertising. Some of them won through Joe Public in the first two years, won awards. We only did that for the first 2 years. The third year I moved to Joburg, and then we sold. The model was under pressure because now suddenly with clients, you couldn't monetize all the things they wanted. But it was a great learning ground and system.
I've mentioned there you sold. So again, I said I've worked.
Sold our souls.
Yeah.
Sold.
I've worked for big corporate in the space, Huntless Cars, and had that experience with TBWA that you have to phone New York to hire somebody and have that, and it's very different to the entrepreneurial mindset. And it's where you just you feel a person, you got to go.
Anything over $5,000.
This is what I want to. I want to touch on that and how you because in part of the book you go back to how you bought it back, and that's an incredible part of the story. But I love this. Made me think of it when I was reading the book. Is what's the first rule of dancing with the devil? Do you know the first rule with dancing with the devil? Don't. So it's never ever never ever sell your soul. That's what your book says.
I framed the champagne cork. It's hanging in our building. It actually says ever twice. Never ever ever sell your soul. Now think of the gift. I mean, the gift is incredible, because if it wasn't for that gift, we would probably be doing things the traditional way. Build a business, sell it. Accenture in 2020 called me when I was at the VAL, the CEO of South Africa, and said, he didn't say this, but I know David Droger came to South Africa for the design Indaba. And he was already then Accenture the stake in Droger. And he went back and he was like, this is the most creative country I've ever been to. We got to buy an agency here. And they approached us. And look, actually, I was quite keen, I must be honest. And I'll tell you why. I'm very deeply passionate about this purpose for business. So I thought, well, let's not say I was keen, but I toyed with the idea, and I took it to our board, because I thought, geez, imagine I can do purpose work through a company that employs 400,000 people. I mean, yes, can you imagine the impact? But then one of our shareholders, Mpumi, she just asked questions. She said, but it's not aligned to our purpose, because our purpose is to serve the growth of our people, our clients, and our country. And we're now in the process of changing it to world, which includes our country, but let's say then it was country. And when she said that, unanimously we said no. So the purpose negated anything like that. Just went okay, well, we can't go against our core strategy. But I think what also played out was the realization of what does happen to companies when we do this as entrepreneurial concerns. Because that 8 years as part of reporting to New York, that was cellular learning on how you can take your eye off the main thing. Because there's no interest in your output and your service to your client. There's nothing. There's just
bottom line.
Bottom line's the top priority, and it's margins and running a business by looking at spreadsheets. It was intense.
Yeah, there's one thing that, we're going to be here a while if we get stuck on everything. But there's something you said about so I noted it, the most creative country. And I potentially think that is because of our diversity. I don't know if you're touched on that, but Joe is 60% black owned, am I right?
Yeah, 64%
black owned. So we knew, quote from your book, we knew intuitively that diversity would breed true creativity.
So that, now what's interesting there and why I stand by that, and I don't know where that comes from. Okay, like you could go, oh, does that come from white guilt because you're Afrikaner or whatever? But I think it's more coming from I know it comes from my purpose. But what's interesting, this is also the fascinating thing about purpose. That thing was already there when I joined art school. Because I come from the old South Africa, out of Afrikaans society, and we all, if you're Afrikaans, you know what that means. I mean, that still happens to this day. There are people that are not transforming their mindsets or their belief systems. You know? But I came out of that apartheid racist conditioning, and I went to art school. And intuitively, when I experienced what people were speaking about, freeing Nelson Mandela, this is like 1988, 89. Intuitively, I resonate. So something at my beingness already bought into that narrative. My human conditioning still kind of was confused, but this thing that attracts us to our life partners, to our wives and our husbands, and these things that magically happens. So I was attracted to that. And what's fascinating is long before there was a scorecard, we already started becoming much more diverse. Long before, because you have to be over a certain revenue. We had Kolisa and Kutala with us before there was a scorecard. So what's going on there? You're just doing what you intuitively know is going to create the best environment for the best work. So it might not even be, oh, we just want to help transform South Africa. You're going like almost intuitively, if you want to be creative, you need more thinking, different contexts, different backgrounds, different people, different. So interesting. Yeah. Elon Musk, I don't know enough about him, but his narrative's not completely supporting that. He just goes after excellence, irrespective. And I'm speaking completely now on the spot, and I know that this then becomes like it's on a podcast. You can't erase it. But I do think, it's like the question, are great leaders born or are they grown? And I would say they're grown. So by the same assumption, I have to say that excellence is grown, not necessarily born, If I'm working from the hypothesis that every single person is actually born magnificent, and then they're just conditioned away from their magnificence, then you need to kind of work to find it and lift it out. So I prefer to find people that want to succeed with lesser talent than having the highly talented people that doesn't want to give that extra yard.
Yeah. No, awesome. And you hear at the moment you'll be speaking at TEDx tomorrow. We'll have the link to that in the show notes, guys. But that's sold out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just dude, I'm already nervous.
Yeah.
I must finish my presentation because I heard there's going to be some clients and prospective clients.
Okay.
So I'll go like, you can't wing this. You're going to go practice tonight and fit into 18 minutes.
Yeah, you're going to be on the red circle. It's like, it's one of my, a lot of these quotes and this information I have in this head of mine is from TED Talks, I think. So I love this one school at a time. What changes? This is one of the questions. What changes do you foresee in education? And is it linked? Is this going to be something you touch on your TEDx, or do you want to go into what you'll be speaking about? Or?
So the school thing, I'm finding myself moving on conceptually, and I'll tell you exactly why. So it's taken 17 years to achieve a 5-year objective. We tried to go into a second school, one school against 22,500. I mean, like, how are you going to affect change? And yes, we've created multiple, or supported the creation of multiple engineers. There's so many engineers that are now full-blown engineers from that school. And I know we play some small part in that, because it's been significant support. We've got a full-time MD running it. There's stuff that goes in there that no one's even aware of that we do. But my mentor, he said to me a few years ago, he said, but you're not going to affect the change you want. If you want to affect the change that you want, you need to go after leadership. You have to change the leaders, or you cannot affect to change the system. And in that conversation, I shifted because my vision was always, the means to achieve my vision was always education. My means to achieve my vision now in this lifetime, that's what I'm aiming for in this lifetime, is to facilitate the creation of a purpose for South Africa. That's my big play. That's my big bet. That's why I spent 6 years of my life to become a doctor, because people believe that you know more because you've got that title. It's the only reason I did that, to be able to go to the top corporates and say, this is what I do. I did a doctorate on conscious leadership and purposeful organizational purpose. And if you're interested to transform, I've got the methodology to bring into your business. So yes, the school thing is close to my heart, but it's we're doing significant work within one school, but it's not aligned to what I want to achieve.
So you very much lead by example. That's what
I'm sometimes a very good example, sometimes a terrible example.
But I
lead by a good and a bad example.
And that's potentially why I thought the entrepreneurs and leaders in general, if you can help them change their minds, give them purpose or get them on that, then they get to affect change. Because you've said you've got 400 people that if you have access to them right now, you can put out a message in one of your groups, Netherlands and that sort of thing. And you can be the change really nicely. It's easier to affect change at those higher levels to get it distributed, is it not? One of those?
But now, herein lies the challenge, though, because the world, since Simon Sinek's talk that broke the internet, TED Talk, back in 2010, that's 3 years after I stumbled onto this approach. And there must be various approaches, not just one approach. But this one really significantly brought capital into my life. I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. So this is my one school, which was Rock for AIDS, for 3-4 years prior to that shift. After massive effort, paying 120,000 Rand for the gear, getting Just Ginger and getting like Mark Lottering as a stern and Harris Tweed as another band, 500 people, and then we'll net 10,000 Rand profit. Because once you pay all those overheads and you sell your tickets.
And you sell a guitar for 35 or something.
So I think the guitar was the second one. Hang on, whoa, no. But that's interesting you say that. The guitar, I'm getting my story. The guitar was the year, that was 2007. So 2006, prior my turning point, we raised 10,000. 2005, 10,000. 2004, 10,000. 2007, 110,000 times 10. 2008, 1.5 million. So times 10 in 2 years. And then quite a few years later, I was offered $1 billion. So now how does that exponential growth of capital get attracted to you? That's what I'm speaking about tomorrow in my TED Talk. Because if you want to be really, really wealthy in your life, there is a way. So, and that's what fascinated me, and that's just on the one metric. That's why I realized my assumption was not right prior to that turning point. I overshot my assumption. I thought my life was 40%. It was like 0.801%. So, it's a fascinating. This purpose thing is, and then what I realize is, that's the point now. Now, Simon Sinek starts with purpose. The whole world talks about purpose. The last 2 years, what's happening? Everyone's moving off purpose because no one can implement. Zero implementation. People just don't know how to implement. Why? Because everyone wants their company to be conscious and to be purposeful, but individual leaders don't know their own purpose. And they don't want to do the work that it needs to discover your own purpose, because you have to go and interrogate your 0 to 6-year-old little self. And that work is very hard. And if you're earning like 5, 8, 10, 15, 20 million a year, life's great. Why would I go and scratch and where it doesn't itch?
Why would I ruffle my own feathers?
So it's one thing to go and do my workshops that I do with corporates, and go, okay, now the company is empowered to find the word that it stands for, and you can build your strategy around it. But your implementation will fail if your executive board are 10 people and every single one of those 10 are not living their own purposes. That's proven by my thesis.
So I guess, yeah, sorry, another quote there, but what you're doing there is leading them to the water, but when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, and some people need to step into that, I guess, and what you said before, it's one of those things that some things you can't know. So some things I can't know and some things I don't know. And at least you've got that, I love that credibility of the doctor coming in, presenting and giving them information. And I do feel that you lead by example, and that's the experience share. It's, guys, this is working for me from that 100 or 10 billion. Like that story is just, this is the example. So this is how you do it. So some people, when they're ready, the teacher will appear. Yeah.
So now what's amazing is that I'm not obsessed about it anymore. So I also run transformational workshops, and I'm not a shrink. So my next PhD will have to be in the field of psychology just to give me more credibility. Because I get challenged sometimes, but dude, you're not dabbling in stuff that you know nothing about. I'm like, maybe not, I don't know, but I'll go and do a doctorate so that you believe me. But I do these other experiences for executives, and they're becoming more and more powerful every time I run them. So, but the shift that happened there was I don't take them that seriously anymore. So I used to be like, I must help people. Now I'm just going, listen, guys, it's a creative exercise. It's 2 days, beautiful setting. We've got a beautiful sanctuary on the Vaal. We engage, we do group work, 4 to 5 people at a time, but it's a creative exercise. So I don't make this thing as this groundbreaking shift in your life. I've just softened the hell down on it.
Lower the expectations.
Much more. No, just make it more like lighter and gentler, and doesn't matter if it doesn't shift your life, but just come and talk about stuff you've never talked about. It's definitely shifted. So I've done that. And then this amazing chap I know, Gilan Gork, mentalist and also development coach for leaders. And I was chatting to him the other day, and he said to me, you know what, you might just be 10 years ahead of your time, and you can use the next 10 years to hone in on your craft, because he mentioned he thinks in 10 years there's going to be more of a readiness. And that, I thought, geez, that's such a wonderful thing to. So at the moment, I'm actually the student. I'm the oak that's learning more about this thing, so that I'm ready when people really takes it seriously.
So I met him, at an EO event. Incredible machine of note there. One of the things that this might be interesting to you for educational purposes, but the way we experience share in EO, it's you have a forum once a month. You meet with 7 other entrepreneurs, and you spend about 4 hours, and they're not in your field. There's no competitors. There's no conflict. And when someone presents a problem they're having or some situation, you give an experience share. So that's the story. So one of the reasons why you give an experience share is because you don't know their situation. You don't know their books. You don't know this. They've given you a little window into what's happening in their world. And so you can't make the right call. Who are you to make 100%. That call? So, and then the other thing is, what happens if you gave them advice and you told them what they should do? First of all, they're entrepreneurs. They don't like shoulds. If they like shoulds, they would work at a big corporate. They'd work at wherever, and they would listen to direction. Should is a directional word. So they don't like shoulds. So then they're going to be closed. Some entrepreneurs can be open. I think the creative ones, it's one of the traits, but not the shoulds sort of ruffle feathers there. So they don't like shoulds. Your message, your advice is probably not going to get it taken. And then that's potentially offensive. But I told you how you should fix this. You can fix it, and you're going to get irritated, and you're not going to be heard. And the other thing is that what happens if they take your advice and it's wrong because you didn't have the right information, you didn't have all that, and you failed them with that. So an experience shares that story, that storytelling, and that what usually tied to an emotion. So I felt this way, and then for instance, the study, the example that they give during training is that somebody presents a financial concern, they're not able, the cash flow problem, they're not going to be able to pay salaries at the end of the month, beginning of the month, and they're just so stressed. And they don't know how they're going to get there. And the emotion is anxiety that they're feeling. They're anxious about it. So like, I can speak to anxiety. Like I've level 1,000 on that. I got that done. I can tell you a story about anxiety. The last time I can think of it was I wrote, it was the first time in about 20 years I wrote an exam for Microsoft on AI, and I had it booked in. I was going to do it by this deadline. I had to get there. So what I did to get me there, because I was so anxious about not being able to produce the goods on that day, was put in markers and make sure that like I studied on those days, and I made the calls to the people that I need to learn from or whatever, and I banked all the knowledge up until then, and I managed to pass it. Mm-hmm. And people can take out of that story, I need to put in calendar, I need to put in milestones to get get money in the bank and make the calls that I need to do, and then I'll get there. And they could do that, or they could just say, John, that's a cool story, bro. And
so tell me, so do you know about Nancy Klein then?
Nancy Klein, I've heard, yes.
Yeah, so she's Time to Think. She's the founder, or the founder, the founder of Time to Think, and they do a council. It's a good thing to remind me of that, because the Time to Think Council is it's exactly that. You do not know the answers. You have to just share your experience to contextualize for that person. But it's a good thing to remind me as well.
But people love the stories. So like you take out of the stories. But we're going to move on quickly because we've got to get to this beautiful case study. And then potentially we can touch on, because I've got questions from Narieta and from other colleagues, and Dale Tomlinson from the Hardy Boys. So But let's go to the case study, I think.
There's a South African story that lurks in the shadows.
Now, teenage pregnancy remains a major
Child
concern.
and teen pregnancies in South Africa.
Children 12 years and under do not have the capacity to consent.
In 2022, 3,598 girls between the ages of 10 and 14 gave birth.
We have 9-year-old mothers. These are real people with real names.
The younger these girls are, the higher the likelihood of complications during childbirth. This Youth Month, a commemorative month born of young people taking a stand, Amnesty International partnered with various NGOs to give these girls a voice. Introducing Scarred. We found 3 real stories of South African girls and got famous South African poets to rewrite them in their specific style. The poems were then performed to original tracks created for each one.
We don't speak of what took place.
This was part of growing up.
Our print ads focused on the one area that spoke volumes, their cesarean scars. A Spotify code was overlaid over each scar. Scanning the scar through Spotify took the viewer to Amnesty's Spotify page, Scarred. Here, this sensitive subject could be tackled in a multi-sensory experience, allowing us to truly connect with the viewer through the power of music and the spoken word.
His hands grabbing.
My terror is his pleasure.
When you listen to these stories done in a poetic way, it gives you a real feeling of what these young girls have actually been through.
Sparking a lively debate across the country.
Amnesty International South Africa scanned their scar.
A call to action at the end of each piece directed them to Amnesty International's site, where they could do their part in changing the stories of thousands of girls across the nation by sending a pre-populated email to the President of South Africa demanding action over this issue.
We need to hold government accountable because we need to care for the children.
Sounds amazing.
Crazy, yeah?
It's wild.
Yeah.
I actually thought it's between this one. I wanted to send a one school piece as well, Project English, but this is the most recent one. We've done 2 for them this year. And we did quite an expose on education a few years ago with Verwoerd to sign the smile off his face, because we were saying if he knew the state of education, he'll be smiling. So,
Was this done by you guys?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Amnesty long-standing, so we don't really do, we've got our own non-prof, but Amnesty is the only one that we sort of ongoing do work for them, but it's not a formalized, it's just a very good relationship with the CEO, and then whatever burning issue we can put a spotlight on. But it's small scale. You know, they don't have much money, so it's always in the social space. How do we create social noise on low budgets for them? So there's two pieces. There's another one as well, which is unbelievable. Also in the education space.
I mean, these are incredible. The work. We featured work before 1976 school class.
Oh, wow!
We featured your work, with Narita picked that,
Okay, yeah.
So we'll have links to that episode.
But that's got the might of Nedbank behind it.
Yeah.
That went quite big, and that was phenomenal. And I mean, those are up in schools, and but again, not as many as you would like to do, you know. So, but still.
So
blessed.
This one in particular, I absolutely loved it. Like I said to you while we were watching, is that I listened to Zama's story. It's the first one out of the three poets, and I'll listen to the rest.
It's hectic.
But I need a capacity.
No, it's hectic.
Like it's.
What have you got? Boys and girls? What's your kids?
I've got two boys.
Two boys, yeah. But either way, it is just terrific.
No, it's
terrific. When you hear, and those are real stories, which is insane.
Yeah. So there we get. So we analyze work like this in terms of the 6 principles that we've developed, and they're broken into 3 buckets. So IQ, EQ, and AQ.
What's AQ?
So AQ is the adaptive quotient. So it's, like I said earlier, it's not always the strongest and the fittest that survive. It's the most adaptable to change. And being able to, so I'll give the example, and being able to change can really get you through that, the disruption that may be coming. So, and a lovely example about disruption I've got to mind is that you can't see it coming, because sometimes in marketing we'll be selling lawnmowers, and the next year's campaign we'll partner with a Schick, and we'll have 4 more blades, and we'll do this beautiful blade thing with Schick, and we'll make this lawnmower better and better. We'll innovate, and then somewhere down the line someone's going to invent grass. They've done it already, that only grows so high, and then there's no more lawnmower needed. So it doesn't matter how many partners we have with Gillette, Schick, etc. The grass, you don't need lawnmowers anymore in that world. So that's why you need to be crazy to beat the strong sometimes. But so in the EQ quotient, that the first principle is experiences replace messages. So that's creating an immersive brand experience to connect emotionally. Absolutely nails it. So that's where I had that quote that we mentioned earlier, is tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand. So people actually got involved in the campaign. You got pulled and you had to scan something. Then you listened to a piece, and you could read it because it's spoken word, much like these podcasts we were talking about, where you can then transcribe them and they become spoken word and SEO articles and all kinds of things.
And that's also the power of story. So you immerse someone into someone else's experience. Yeah. And it becomes, in some way, can become a lived experience through someone else vicariously.
100%.
And it's like you know, human civilizations or humans have lasted for so many years, and the one thing that we carry with us is story.
Yeah.
So that's,
so
amazing.
like I said, I could only listen to one today. I'll have to cowboy up for the other ones.
For the others. Yeah. So it's fascinating that it is the most powerful way on all platforms, and Nedbank is embracing this level of work now as well. And 1 or 2 of our other clients. But it's also interesting leadership when you start seeing other big marketers, because Nedbank CMO is the number 1 marketer in the country at the moment. So, of course, she's looked at. Now, when she leads by example, the others slowly, because that is actually the best way of marketing. There is a space for retail and fast, but that should be 60%, 70% of your mix. At the moment, it's 99%. So it's great that you pick up on that.
You nailed that. Then the next principle within that bucket is value exchange. So offering useful or entertaining service to engage emotionally. So the poetry to be read or to listen to, that's entertaining, or was that at a minimum. Something to get behind. So the letter to the president. So like giving people something, like that bit of it. The next bucket is IQ. So for this, we've got the first one we'll tackle is detach and distribute. So that is strategically repurposing and distributing content across and within platforms. So the poems are written and then they're spoken, and then they're like on a podcast platform like Audible. The next one, and this would have been Joe Connect. I would have done that. The digital guys. We work with always on optimization.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing how this lands in the market and then changing your ads and updating. It's not necessarily a TVC. You can change it. We just had it with one of our pieces, the little clips that we put out. People were thinking that that's the finished product, and it's like they were congratulating whoever was who were the Incredible Machine, and they weren't going and actually seeing the podcast. So we had to change the call to action at the end and in the copy just to say full episode available, or you need to see the full episode. So because it's digital, you can jump around and you can always always on optimize. The AQ part is the adaptive, that adaptive quotient. It's a lovely TED talk on that I'll put in the show notes for you and for everyone listening and watching. But collaborative environments, so encouraging user-generated content, because this was user-generated content, and co-creation.
Massive co-creation.
Yeah. So the letters, the poems, but then the letter to the president. So giving people that opportunity to take this journey with you.
Yeah.
So nailed that principle, and then the crazy be strong is the last principle. So it's embrace the disruptive, unconventional ideas to stay adaptable. And so the power of a scar and using the Spotify code, that's just having that as your visual was, I don't know how they got there. I don't know how they got there, but to have that as that's the piece, the scar and what it means. And then that little code that takes you somewhere else and that sort of stuff. So I really, really love that.
So I'll tell you a little insight. So this is the second year we're doing a campaign around this issue. And as I said, it's you almost wish that you can do this level of important work at a bigger scale. But that's where big brands, because media is so you got to think in the space. But the previous campaign, we actually got True Love. It was True Love. I don't want to misquote now which magazine it was. I hope it was. I think it definitely was. To give up their front page of their magazine for pregnant 14-year-old. And that was the previous, and that stirred a huge, that actually blew up as much as you can blow up with small budget, but because we had a front page, it really blew up. Because you were saying, so this goes into what we call a Power Joe Public. So we put it out to multiple teams. I wouldn't say we've got a level of competition, but we're more collaborative than competing. But I think the funnel of having 6 weeks to conceive solutions and knowing that you're actually coming into the senior. I mean, as a creative, I'm going, geez, if they did this to me when I was in the team, I would have sleepless nights. And we try and create a safe environment, but I think it still puts quite a bit of pressure on them. This team, it is amazing. I mean, this is Claudia and Vuyani, who's one of our senior teams, but traditionally through their backgrounds, maybe not the opportunity to do that much conceptual thinking or exercise their conceptual muscles. So the Power Joe gave them the opportunity to show what they can do. And it's amazing because when you see this at concept level, which is a scamp, we're still old school. You're coming in with it's not a presentation, but you take a scamp and you scan it and put it on the screen. But you just get the concept from, the insight there that these young kids can't give natural birth and they get cesarean cut, and then the way that the Spotify code looks and the call to action on the ads actually scan the scar for the consumer.
Yeah.
And then it's unbranded, which is even more intriguing, which you don't get many brands that will actually go there. And then only when you land, you get the brand association. So this is phenomenal. And the amount of development through the process then, because then suddenly, because it's Spotify, And that's where the collaboration come in, and then the idea of, okay, well, let's get like a slam poet. Let's get 3 different ones. Let's get the stories to them and let them reinterpret the stories in their poetry.
So good.
So it's like really beautiful. It gives me so much, you don't want to say joy on the context matter like this, but if I think in general, the creativity of Joe Public and its people, I mean, really, I wake up on a Monday. I've never in 28 years have not felt like, let's go. Let's do this.
Let's go.
Let's do
this.
this.
Like I worked very shortly or briefly with a few of your team. I know people that work in your stable and that sort of stuff, or work with you. But just it's been an absolute pleasure. I think Porna and Michelle, the boss's boss.
Yeah,
so is that
the boss's boss.
Yeah, no,
that is the boss. I'm definitely not the boss.
So that's and that's a generalization. I think in agencies that traffic, she's traffic. Am I correct? Would be the boss's boss. The next thing, and we didn't get this from you, so I'm going to put you on the spot for it. And if we don't have it, we can come up with something. Yeah. But a quote. I asked for a quote that keeps coming up for you.
In general?
Yeah, like your favorite quote.
No, my favorite quote is my quote from my book. The worst thing that can happen is the best thing that can happen. Because I'll give you an example. Since we're speaking on the subject of often what is rape. A woman that works for us, her sister, very famous South African. She was raped by her mother's. But this is very controversial, what I'm going to say now. I think for a lot of people it will be. For me, it's not. But she was raped from a very young age, like 9 till 16, and this person who are really dear to me, Joe Publican, gave me the book that she authored. And I read it. I could not, like you, only listen to one of these. Very graphic, very detailed. I could not read. I couldn't get, I was like, I cannot absorb this as a male. She's today one of the top trauma counselors for people who suffers from trauma from rape in the world. So now I'm not saying the act that she went through is right, but I'm saying she was empowered through that to be able to serve other people. And in my experience, every single thing that I would deem in the moment as a terrible thing, and I'm saying that outside of experiencing death, because that's probably as a parent my greatest fear. And when it comes up for me, I shut it down because I don't want to manifest anything through my thinking. But it is one of those unconscious pressures that sits on me as a father, is the safety of my child, first and foremost, and of my wife, the 2 people closest to me. But outside of that, it's just fascinating. When my wife broke my heart, because she's a high school sweetheart, and left me for this English guy. I mean, I asked her, why are you leaving? Because I'm Afrikaans. I could hardly speak English, but we spoke the language of love. I said to her, like, why? And because he can play guitar. That's why I learned to play guitar in the army. That opened me up to 16 years of playing live music all over South Africa, from 2 people to 2,000 people, backing out the Roxy on Friday nights. Like, week after week, those experiences are you can't put money on those experiences. What instigated those experiences? A broken heart. And I got the girlfriend back. So numerous ones. Joe Public, bankruptcy, losing that client, it devalued the company to a level that we could afford to go into negotiations to buy it back. Best thing that could ever happen. That's why when you asked for the graph, it was, I had to indicate those are not low points. If I didn't start delivering newspapers at 12 to help feed our family, privileged white family, but still little means, very little means, I would not be an entrepreneur. There is no way. I learned how to generate capital from a very young age. Of course, I only learned at 38 how to make real money, because that's the problem with the world. Everyone tried to do things to make money. It doesn't work like that. So when you find purpose, and that's what you bring, that's why Steve Jobs became so wealthy. You didn't want to make money. You wanted to add value to the world. You wanted to put a dent in the universe. You wanted to create a creative tool that serves creative people. That was his heart's desire. At 25, he was a billionaire. So that I only figured out at 38. But prior to that, all those things drove me as an entrepreneur, or drove me to become an entrepreneur. So it's amazing. They're gifts. So the worst thing that can happen is the best thing that can happen.
Well, that's incredible. I think that's where we wrap it up. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm so grateful. Dr. Pepe Marais, the incredible machine. Thank you.
And two ways, totally. I mean, that's why I said, geez, man, we're both students. So you get so much out of these conversations, which is so I really appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.